No wake, no blood trail, no carcass floating. Just empty swells where a 40-ton whale had fought for its life. The British merchant barque Pauline carried 30 seasoned men across the South Atlantic in July 1875. Every single one of them witnessed the same impossible sight: a serpentine creature wrapped twice around a full-grown sperm whale, constricting, drowning, dragging it beneath the surface. Maritime logs explain storms, collisions, disease, crew madness. But what explains a creature killing the ocean's apex predator in daylight? The Pauline left Liverpool in early June 1875. 1,200 tons of British oak and canvas. Captain George Drevar commanded her. 43 years old, 26 years at sea, 11 as master. His logbook recorded every bearing, every shift in wind, every sail adjustment. The entries were precise, clinical, the kind of record that survives Admiralty Court. First mate Thomas Hartley kept the watch rotation. Boatswain William Ashford managed the deck crew. Quartermaster Edward Mills held the helm through 3-hour watches. None of them were strangers to deep water. None of them were prone to fantasy. The route followed standard commercial lanes. Liverpool to Rio de Janeiro, then south along the Brazilian coast. Cargo manifests listed textiles, iron tools, barrel staves, trade goods for colonial markets. The crossing took 6 weeks. Weather held fair, winds steady from the northeast, the kind of passage that earns no mention in maritime history until July 1st. The Pauline was running southeast off the coast of Rio Grande do Norte, approximately 60 nautical miles from Cabo de São Roque, the easternmost point of South America. Open ocean, deep water. The lookout was Seaman James Crawford, 22 years old, sharp eyes. He called down from the mainmast crosstrees at 14 minutes past 2 in the afternoon. His voice carried across the deck with unusual urgency. Not alarm, not panic, confusion. Captain Drevar climbed to the quarterdeck. He raised his telescope. The sea stretched flat and blue under cloudless sky. Then he saw the disturbance. Approximately 400 yards off the starboard bow. White water. Violent thrashing. The unmistakable blow of a sperm whale. But something was wrong with the pattern. Whales breach. They sound. They surface to breathe. They do not remain locked in one position. They do not fight the water itself. Drevar called for the crew to reduce sail. The Pauline slowed, drifted closer. At 300 yards, the shape became clear. A sperm whale. Bull. Mature. Possibly 45 feet in length. Its tail was beating the surface in massive, desperate strikes. Each blow sent spray 30 feet into the air. But the whale was not moving forward. It was being held, compressed. Something dark coiled twice around its body. Once near the head, once near the flukes. First, Mate Hartley joined the captain at the rail. He did not speak immediately. Neither did Boatswain Ashford, nor Quartermaster Mills, nor Seaman Robert Finch, who stood at the bow with his mouth open. They watched in collective silence as the whale struggled against the constriction. The coils tightened visibly. The whale's movements became slower, more labored, less coordinated. The serpent's head rose above the surface. Not a whale, not a giant squid, not any creature listed in zoological texts. The head was elongated, smooth, dark brown or black, approximately 6 feet in length. The neck was as thick as a ship's mast. The body maintained uniform diameter along its visible length. No fins, no flippers, no features that matched any known marine animal. The thing moved with deliberate, controlled force. Its coils did not slip, did not loosen. The whale's massive body compressed under the pressure. Captain Drevar ordered the ship to hold position. He wanted witnesses, verification. He called cook Samuel Porter and carpenter Henry Blackwell to the deck. Both men arrived within seconds. Both men saw the same thing. Drevar noted the time in his mental log. 14 minutes past 2. He would write it down later, exactly as he saw it. No interpretation, no theory, just the facts. The fight lasted 15 minutes. The whale attempted 3 breaches, failed each time. The serpent maintained its grip. The whale's tail continued to strike the water, but the blows grew weaker. The rhythm became irregular. At 29 minutes past 2, the whale stopped thrashing. Its body went slack. The coils remained tight for another 30 seconds. Then the serpent began to descend. Slowly, deliberately. The whale's body disappeared beneath the surface, head first. Then the massive bulk of the torso. Finally, the flukes. The water smoothed. The white foam dissipated. Within 2 minutes, the ocean returned to its previous flat, undisturbed state. No blood, no oil slick, no debris, no evidence that anything had occurred, except 30 men standing at the rails of the Pauline, watching empty water, trying to process what their eyes had just transmitted to their brains, trying to reconcile the impossible with the undeniable. Drevar returned to his cabin. He opened his logbook. He recorded the date, time, position, and weather conditions. Then he wrote 4 sentences describing the event. He used no adjectives, no speculation. He noted the whale's estimated size, the serpent's visible dimensions, the duration of the struggle, the final disappearance. He signed the entry. Then he called First Mate Hartley to witness and countersign. Hartley read the entry. He added his own signature without comment. That evening, Drevar gathered the senior crew. Hartley, Ashford, Mills, Crawford, Finch, Porter, Blackwell. He asked each man to write his own account. Separate, independent, no discussion beforehand. 7 accounts, 7 descriptions of the same event. The dimensions varied slightly. The colors differed by shade, but the core facts aligned with disturbing consistency. A serpent, coiled around a whale, constricting, dragging it under, in broad daylight, in calm seas, witnessed by multiple trained observers. The Pauline continued south, reached Rio de Janeiro 11 days later. Drevar filed his report with the British consulate. The consul read it, raised his eyebrows, asked if the captain had consumed spirits that afternoon. Drevar replied that he had not. The consul asked if any crew members had shown signs of fever or delirium. Drevar said no. The consul made a notation in the margin of the report, then filed it in a leather portfolio marked for cases requiring no immediate action. 3 weeks later, the account appeared in a London maritime journal. Stripped of official context, published as curiosity, reader response was immediate. Zoologists dismissed it. Naturalists called it impossible. A few sailors wrote letters supporting Drevar's credibility, but no scientific institution launched an investigation. No expedition was funded. No follow-up interviews were conducted. The case was noted, catalogued, then quietly archived under incidents lacking physical evidence. But the logbook remained. 7 signed witness statements remained. Captain George Drevar's reputation remained unblemished. He continued to command vessels for another 20 years. He never retracted his account. He never embellished it. When asked, he simply referred questioners to the original entry in the Pauline's log. July 1st, 1875, 14 minutes past 2 in the afternoon. 60 miles east of Cabo de São Roque, a serpent wrapped twice around a sperm whale. Witnessed, recorded, never explained. The Pauline's crew did not discuss the event that night. Not in the forecastle, not during watch changes, not over meals. Seaman Crawford sat on his bunk with his hands folded. Quartermaster Mills checked compass bearings 3 times instead of once. Cook Porter burned the evening stew. Nobody complained. The silence was not discipline. It was the instinctive response of men who had seen something that violated every rule they had learned about the ocean. Captain Drevar studied the witness statements in his cabin. He laid them side by side on his chart table. 7 men, 7 separate accounts. The consistency troubled him more than differences would have. If the descriptions had varied wildly, he could blame collective hysteria, mass hallucination, sun glare on water. But the accounts aligned on every critical detail: the serpent's dark coloration, the 2 coils around the whale's body, the smooth, uniform thickness of the creature, the deliberate, controlled descent, the complete absence of blood or debris. First Mate Hartley had noted the serpent's head dimensions: 6 feet from snout to where the neck began, width approximately 3 feet, no visible eyes at that distance, no fins, no dorsal structure. Boatswain Ashford had focused on the coils. Each loop measured roughly 60 feet in circumference. The spacing between coils was uniform, 10 to 12 feet. The creature maintained tension without visible effort. No thrashing, no adjustment, just steady, lethal pressure. Seaman Finch had watched the whale's attempts to escape. 3 breaches, each one weaker than the last. The tail strikes became erratic after the first 5 minutes. The whale's blowhole expelled water mixed with spray. Not the normal respiratory pattern. The breathing was shallow, desperate. Finch had seen whales hunted by whalers. He had seen them die from harpoons and lances. He had never seen one rendered helpless so quickly. A sperm whale could fight for hours. This one lasted 15 minutes. Carpenter Blackwell had estimated the serpent's total length based on visible coils. 2 complete wraps around a 45-foot whale, plus the extended head, plus the portion below the surface holding the tail section. Minimum length, 160 feet, possibly more. He had built ships. He understood structural engineering. He could not explain how a soft-bodied creature of that length could generate enough force to crush a whale's ribcage. The physics made no sense. The musculature required would exceed anything in nature. Cook Porter had focused on the aftermath, the clean disappearance. He had fished the North Atlantic for 12 years before joining merchant service. He knew what death at sea looked like. Blood spreads, oil floats, bodies surface when gases accumulate. The ocean does not erase evidence instantly. Yet within 2 minutes of the serpent descending, the water showed nothing. No disturbance, no trace, no indication that tons of flesh and bone had just been dragged into the depths. Drevar compared the accounts to his own observations. He had noted the time of initial sighting, 14 minutes past 2. He had noted the time the whale stopped fighting, 29 minutes past 2. 15-minute duration. Every witness agreed. He had estimated the distance from the Pauline to the Struggle, 400 yards initially, approximately 250 yards at closest approach. Visibility was perfect, sky clear, sea calm, no atmospheric distortion, no reason for optical illusion. The captain opened his personal library, 3 volumes on marine zoology, 2 on cetaceans, 1 comprehensive study of cephalopods. He searched for any recorded instance of a serpentine predator capable of constricting large prey. Constrictors existed on land: pythons, anacondas, boas, all of them ambush hunters in tropical environments. None of them exceeded 30 feet. None of them hunted in open ocean. None of them possessed the body mass to challenge a whale. Giant squid had been documented. The largest specimen measured 50 feet, including tentacles. But squid attacked with arms and beak. They did not coil. They did not constrict. Their bodies were soft, vulnerable. They relied on speed and surprise. They could not maintain sustained pressure against a thrashing whale, and squid left evidence. Sucker marks, broken tentacles, ink clouds. The creature that killed the whale left nothing. Oarfish grew to extraordinary lengths, up to 36 feet. They were serpentine in appearance, but oarfish were thin, fragile, deep water filter feeders. They had no predatory capability. They moved with undulating lateral motion, not constricting coils. They could not support their own weight out of water, let alone compress a whale. Sea serpent sightings existed in maritime records, dozens of them, hundreds if folklore was included. But most descriptions were vague, distant, fleeting glimpses of humps or coils breaking the surface, often attributed to misidentified whales, or floating debris, or psychological projection by exhausted crews. The Pauline incident was different. Close range, extended duration, multiple trained observers. Physical interaction with a known animal, measurable dimensions, documented outcome. Drevar found one comparable account, the Daedalus sighting, August 1848, off the Cape of Good Hope, British Royal Navy frigate, Captain Peter McCue commanding. The crew reported a serpent swimming alongside the ship for 20 minutes, head and neck visible above water, estimated length 60 feet, dark coloration, no fins. McCue filed an official report with the Admiralty. Naturalists debated it for months. No conclusion was reached, no specimen was ever obtained. The case remained open, unexplained, like the Pauline would remain. The difference was predation. The Daedalus crew saw a creature swimming, moving through water, existing. The Pauline crew saw a creature hunting, killing, dominating one of the planet's apex predators with methodical, terrifying efficiency. The Daedalus serpent could be dismissed as misidentified fauna. The Pauline serpent could not. It had demonstrated capabilities that should not exist in any known taxonomy. Drevar closed the zoology texts. He lit his cabin lamp as dusk settled over the Atlantic. He considered writing a detailed analysis, a supplementary report explaining why the event could not be explained, but he decided against it. Analysis would invite skepticism. Theory would invite ridicule. The facts were sufficient. He had recorded what happened. 7 other men had confirmed it. The logbook would speak for itself. Anyone who doubted could examine the original entries, read the witness statements, judge the credibility of 8 experienced sailors against their own assumptions about what the ocean could contain. The ship reached Rio on schedule. Drevar submitted his report as required. The consul's dismissive response did not surprise him. Officials preferred comfortable explanations, misidentification, poor lighting, collective error. Anything except the admission that professional mariners might encounter creatures beyond scientific classification. But Drevar noticed something in the consul's expression, a flicker of unease beneath the skepticism, as if the man wanted to believe the report was false, needed to believe it, because accepting it as truth meant accepting that the ocean held things that could kill with impunity and vanish without trace. 3 months later, a letter arrived at the Pauline's shipping office in Liverpool from a whaling captain named Morrison. He had read the published account in the Maritime Journal. He wanted Drevar to know he was not alone. Morrison's ship, the Rebecca, had found a dead sperm whale floating off the Azores in 1872. The whale bore unusual marks around its torso, deep grooves, evenly spaced, consistent with compression by a large cylindrical object or a large cylindrical animal. The whale's ribs were crushed. Its spine was fractured in 3 places. Morrison had assumed the injuries came from collision with a ship, but the pattern did not match any known hull design, and the whale had been found in open ocean, miles from shipping lanes. He had filed a brief note in his log, then dismissed it, until he read about the Pauline. Drevar kept Morrison's letter in his private papers. He never showed it to the consul. He never published a response. But he wondered how many other captains had seen something similar. How many had filed quiet reports that vanished into maritime archives? How many had witnessed pieces of the same pattern? Marks without explanation, deaths without cause, evidence without context, all of it scattered across decades, across oceans, fragmentary, unconnected, until someone decided to look for the connections. The Pauline's logbook entry remained unchanged. July 1st, 1875. 14 minutes past 2. A serpent wrapped around a whale. 8 signatures. One undeniable fact. The ocean was deeper than any sounding line could measure. And some of the things living in that depth were not interested in being measured. But one detail troubled Drevar more than the others. When the serpent descended with the whale, the water had smoothed instantly, as if nothing had disturbed it, as if the struggle had never happened. That kind of erasure suggested practice, efficiency, routine. This was not the first whale that serpent had killed. It would not be the last. And somewhere in the Atlantic's abyssal zones, there might be places where sperm whales avoided entirely. Deep trenches where even apex predators knew better than to hunt. Where something older and larger held territory that science had never mapped and mariners rarely survived to report. The London Zoological Society received Captain Drevar's account in late August 1875. Secretary Thomas Huxley read it twice. Then he filed it under unverified marine observations. No investigation was commissioned. No follow-up inquiry was sent to Drevar. The Society's official position was clear without being stated. Extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence. Eyewitness testimony, even from multiple credible sources, did not constitute physical proof. Without a specimen, a photograph, or measurable remains, the incident existed in the category of maritime curiosities. Interesting, unexplainable, ultimately irrelevant to scientific taxonomy. But 3 naturalists read the account with different eyes. Dr. James Alderton had spent 6 years studying deep-sea fauna recovered from telegraph cable installations. Dr. Catherine Wycliffe specialized in cetacean biology and had examined hundreds of whale carcasses from whaling stations. Dr. Henry Pembroke documented comparative anatomy of large predators. All 3 recognized something in Drevar's report that the official dismissal had overlooked. The physical details were too specific to be fabrication. The measurements too consistent to be hallucination, the witness count too high to be mass delusion. Alderton wrote to Drevar requesting the original logbook for examination. Drevar declined. The logbook was ship's property, Admiralty jurisdiction. It could not leave the vessel without formal investigation, and no formal investigation had been authorized. Alderton then requested copies of the witness statements. Drevar sent them. 7 handwritten accounts, different penmanship, different vocabulary, different focus points, but identical core observations. Alderton compared the statements line by line. He found no evidence of collusion, no identical phrasing, no rehearsed narrative. Each man had recorded what he saw from his own perspective. The convergence was organic, unsettling, convincing. Wycliffe analyzed the physical mechanics described in the reports. A serpent wrapping twice around a 45-foot sperm whale required minimum body length of 160 feet. The visible portion above water measured approximately 100 feet based on crew estimates. The submerged portion holding the tail section added another 60 to 80 feet. Total length, 160 to 180 feet. Body diameter at thickest point, approximately 4 feet based on comparison to ship's masts. Volume calculations suggested mass exceeding 15 tons, possibly 20. The constriction force needed to kill a sperm whale could be estimated from known anatomy. Adult male sperm whales possessed ribs designed to withstand pressures at depths exceeding 3,000 feet. The rib cage could compress significantly without fracturing. To kill the whale through constriction, the serpent needed to apply sustained pressure exceeding 2 tons per square foot across the thoracic cavity for 15 minutes, without releasing, without fatigue, without visible effort. Wycliffe searched for biological precedents. Anacondas could generate 150 pounds per square inch of constriction pressure, sufficient to kill prey their own size, insufficient to threaten a whale. The scaling problem was insurmountable. Doubling the snake's length did not double its strength. It increased mass and reduced structural integrity. A 160-foot constrictor would collapse under its own weight on land. In water, it would lack the leverage and muscle density to compress anything larger than a seal. Unless the serpent possessed musculature fundamentally different from known reptiles, or mammalian physiology adapted for marine constriction, or something entirely outside current biological categories. Wycliffe wrote her findings in a private journal. She did not publish them. The conclusions led nowhere except into speculation, and speculation without specimens was not science. Pembroke focused on the hunting behavior. Sperm whales were apex predators. They hunted giant squid at depths where pressure crushed most organisms. They possessed echolocation capable of detecting prey miles away. They communicated across ocean basins using low-frequency vocalizations. They traveled in social pods with coordinated defensive strategies. How does a serpent ambush an animal with those capabilities? The Pauline's witnesses described the whale already caught when first sighted. No chase, no struggle during approach. The serpent was already coiled when the crew arrived. This suggested ambush from below. The serpent likely waited in deep water, possibly near a thermal layer where echolocation became unreliable. When the whale passed overhead, the serpent struck upward, wrapped the body before the whale could dive or accelerate. The entire attack occurred in seconds. By the time the Pauline's lookout spotted the disturbance, the whale was already dying. Pembroke calculated the serpent's striking speed. To coil twice around a moving whale required velocity exceeding 20 knots. Sustained for at least 10 seconds, then immediate transition to static constriction. No known marine animal combined that acceleration with that strength. Sailfish could reach 60 knots in short bursts, but sailfish weighed 200 pounds. Scaling that speed to a 15-ton body violated every principle of hydrodynamics. The energy expenditure alone would require caloric intake impossible to sustain in any marine ecosystem. The three naturalists met in London in October 1875. They compared notes. Alderton's authentication of the witnesses, Wycliffe's biomechanical analysis, Pembroke's behavioral assessment. All three reached the same conclusion. If the Pauline crew accurately reported what they saw, then the serpent represented something outside known zoology. Either a surviving prehistoric species, or an evolutionary branch that had diverged so completely from documented fauna that no living relative existed in scientific collections. But without physical evidence, their findings meant nothing. The Zoological Society would not fund an expedition based on witness testimony. The Admiralty would not divert naval resources to search for an animal that might not exist. Private investors showed no interest in financing speculative marine biology. The case stalled. The naturalists returned to their conventional research. The Pauline incident remained a footnote in maritime records. Noted, unexplained, ignored. Then in March 1876, a second report arrived. French merchant vessel Cygne, Captain Louis Moreau commanding. Sighting occurred in the Caribbean Sea, 40 miles north of Martinique. February 20th. The crew observed a large serpentine creature swimming near the surface. Estimated length 120 feet. Dark grey coloration. No visible fins or flippers. The creature did not approach the ship. It moved parallel to the Cygne's course for approximately 8 minutes, then submerged smoothly without disturbance. Moreau filed a brief notation in his log. He made no attempt to publicize the sighting. He considered it unremarkable. Just another unexplained thing the ocean occasionally revealed. A shipping clerk in Marseille read both the Pauline and Cygne reports. He noticed the dimensional similarities. He sent copies to a maritime journal specializing in unusual incidents. The journal published both accounts side by side in April 1876. Reader response was immediate. Letters arrived from ship captains across 3 continents. Most were dismissive, some were curious. 3 contained additional sightings. American whaling ship Gratitude, Captain Samuel Hoskins. September 1873, off the coast of Peru. Crew observed large serpentine creature swimming rapidly westward, estimated length over 100 feet. Creature ignored the ship, disappeared after 5 minutes. Hoskins had not reported it officially. He considered it irrelevant to whaling operations. Portuguese fishing vessel Nossa Senhora, Captain João Ferreira, June 1874, near the Azores. Crew spotted massive coils breaking the surface repeatedly. Pattern suggested something rolling or feeding. Estimated diameter of coils, 4 to 5 feet. Sighting lasted 12 minutes. Ferreira assumed it was a whale engaged in unusual behavior, but the coils moved independently. No head was visible, no tail, just sections of cylindrical body undulating across the surface. Norwegian cargo ship Nordstjerne, Captain Erik Hansen, January 1875, North Atlantic, 600 miles west of Ireland. Lookout reported serpent-like creature following the ship at distance of half a mile. Creature maintained parallel course for over an hour. Captain verified sighting through telescope. Length estimated at 130 feet. Body uniform thickness. Dark brown color. Creature eventually turned south and submerged. Hansen noted the incident in his log with no elaboration. He had seen strange things in 30 years at sea. This was simply one more. 5 separate sightings, 5 different oceans, 5 credible captains, none connected to each other. None seeking publicity or financial gain. All describing creatures that should not exist according to accepted marine biology. The pattern was undeniable. Something large, serpentine, powerful, and entirely outside the catalogue of known species. Yet, no expedition launched, no scientific investigation materialized. The naturalists who believed the reports could not convince institutions to act. The institutions that controlled funding could not justify expenditure on animals that left no physical evidence. The sightings remained isolated data points, intriguing, suggestive, ultimately insufficient. Drevar continued to captain vessels until 1895. He never saw the serpent again. He never retracted his account. When interviewed by journalists in his later years, he simply repeated what he had written in 1875. The serpent wrapped around the whale. The whale died. The serpent descended. Those were the facts. Anyone who wanted more than facts would have to ask the ocean, because the ocean was the only witness that remained. And the ocean kept its secrets locked beneath layers of cold pressure and absolute darkness, where no sounding line could reach and no ship could follow. Down in the trenches, where sunlight never penetrated and the weight of water crushed steel. Down where the rules of surface biology did not apply. Down where things lived that were older than human understanding and larger than human courage. Down where a sperm whale might be prey instead of predator. And down where something coiled in the dark, waiting for the next shadow to pass overhead. The last page of Drevar's personal journal contained a single question written in careful script. If one serpent exists, how many others swim undetected in an ocean covering 70% of the planet? On July 1st, 1875, at 14 minutes past 2 in the afternoon, 30 crew members aboard the British barque Pauline witnessed a serpentine creature constrict and kill a full-grown sperm whale in the South Atlantic Ocean. The event lasted 15 minutes. 8 men provided signed witness statements. The whale disappeared beneath the surface, with no physical evidence remaining. No scientific investigation followed. The most consistent explanation centers on a surviving population of large marine reptiles descended from prehistoric lineages. Mosasaurs dominated Cretaceous oceans until 66 million years ago. Fossil evidence shows specimens exceeding 50 feet in length with powerful constricting musculature adapted for marine predation. The geological record confirms these animals hunted large prey, including sharks, and smaller marine reptiles. Their extinction coincided with the asteroid impact that eliminated non-avian dinosaurs. But extinction events are rarely absolute. Deep ocean refugia could have sheltered relict populations. thermal vents, abyssal trenches, isolated underwater cave systems with access to open ocean, environments where evolutionary pressure favored increased size and specialized hunting strategies. A mosasaur lineage surviving into the modern era would require specific adaptations. Extreme depth tolerance to avoid surface detection. Low metabolic rate to reduce caloric needs in nutrient-poor deep water. Opportunistic feeding patterns targeting large migratory prey during seasonal movements. The serpent's attack on the whale fits this profile. Sperm whales migrate through the South Atlantic following squid populations. They dive to extreme depths, but must surface to breathe. During ascent, they become vulnerable. A large predator waiting in the thermocline layer could strike from below, wrap the body during the brief moment between deep water and surface breathing. The whale's echolocation would fail to detect an ambush predator, remaining motionless in the water column. By the time the whale sensed danger, the coils would already be tightening. The biomechanics align with known constrictor physiology scaled to marine environment. Terrestrial constrictors kill by preventing prey from inhaling. Marine constrictors would need to prevent prey from reaching the surface. The serpent's two-loop coil pattern achieves both. One loop around the head blocks the blowhole. One loop around the posterior body prevents tail propulsion. The whale cannot breathe, cannot dive, cannot swim. It can only thrash until oxygen depletion and cardiac arrest occur. 15 minutes matches the estimated time for a panicked sperm whale to exhaust its oxygen reserves while under compression stress. The clean disappearance supports deep water predation. The serpent did not feed at the surface. It dragged the carcass to depth for consumption in its natural habitat. This behavior parallels crocodilian death rolls and leopard seal cache patterns. Predators that hunt at environmental boundaries typically retreat to safe zones before feeding. The ocean's vertical structure provides infinite safe zones below 2,000 feet. No ship in 1875 could follow. No technology existed to document deep-sea predation. The serpent simply returned to an environment where it had existed undetected for millennia. The consequences were institutional rather than scientific. The Admiralty archived Drevar's report with no action taken. The Zoological Society dismissed the case without investigation. Maritime insurance companies did not adjust risk assessments for Atlantic routes. Whaling operations continued unchanged. The incident produced no policy modifications, no safety protocols, no funded research. Captain Drevar's reputation remained intact, but his report vanished into bureaucratic filing systems designed to categorize rather than investigate. The pattern of dismissal repeated across subsequent sightings. French, American, Portuguese, Norwegian accounts all entered official records. None triggered systematic inquiry. The academic and governmental response was consistent. Unusual sightings were noted, filed, and ignored unless accompanied by physical specimens. This standard protected scientific rigor, but it also ensured that large, intelligent, deep-water predators could exist indefinitely without confirmation. The ocean covered 70% of the planet. Humans had explored less than 5% of its volume by 1875. The remaining 95% remained unmapped, unsampled, and effectively invisible to surface observation. Modern technology would eventually reveal ecosystems at hydrothermal vents, in Hadal trenches, beneath Antarctic ice shelves, communities of organisms thriving in environments previously considered lifeless. If extremophile bacteria could survive in superheated acidic water, why not relict megafauna in cold abyssal plains? The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It is simply evidence that humans looked in the wrong places with inadequate tools, or did not look at all. The Pauline's logbook still exists, preserved in maritime archives in Liverpool. The entry for July 1st, 1875, remains legible. George Drevar's handwriting is clear and steady. No corrections. No amendments, no signs of uncertainty or embellishment. Just clinical documentation of an event that defied explanation but could not be denied. 7 witness statements accompany the log. 8 trained observers recorded the same impossible event. Their accounts have never been discredited, never been explained, never been investigated with resources matching their implications. If the serpent existed, it was not alone. Marine predators of that size require prey populations sufficient to sustain caloric needs. A single individual cannot maintain genetic viability. There must be a breeding population, possibly dozens, perhaps hundreds, distributed across ocean basins at depths where human activity remained absent, hunting migratory whales along predictable routes, occasionally surfacing, occasionally being seen, almost never being believed. The ocean holds more water than all lakes and rivers combined. It contains mountain ranges taller than the Himalayas, and canyons deeper than Everest is tall. It generates its own weather systems and circulates nutrients across global scales. Humans navigate its surface, occasionally penetrate its shallows, but the deep ocean remains as alien and unexplored as any planetary surface in the solar system. The things living there operate according to rules surface biology has never documented: in pressure, in darkness, in cold. In a 3-dimensional environment where size confers advantage and predation occurs vertically as much as horizontally. Captain Drever asked the right question in his journal. If one serpent exists, how many others remain undetected? The ocean is deeper than any chain could measure in 1875. It is still deeper than most humans comprehend. And somewhere in that depth, between the surface light and the absolute darkness of the abyss, creatures hunt that science has not named and institutions have chosen not to find. The Pauline's crew saw one, for 15 minutes, in perfect visibility. Then it vanished. Not because it died, not because it ceased to exist, but because it returned to a world where observation is impossible and evidence dissolves in salt water and pressure. The case was documented, witnessed, signed, filed, then buried under layers of institutional skepticism and budgetary indifference. 8 men told the truth. The system archived it without action. So the question is not whether the serpent existed. The evidence for that is unusually strong. The question is simpler and more disturbing. If 8 credible witnesses weren't enough, what evidence threshold would finally prompt investigation?